more active engagement. So again, in terms of my work here, this is where we started. I'm going to start on that first one because I was standing on Lycée Soleil in what was then the Kagan's 2022 office, and of course was also the tourist office, watching tourists come in, looking for something to do in Kaunas. And yet, I didn't see any of them here. I saw them in the centre of town. So I thought, how do we get those people from the centre of town to Sugihara House? And that's true of the city, locals as well as tourists, I think. How do we get them up that hill? How do we get them from here to come to this amazing place up here? And this is why the first bit of this proposal is actually outside the house. The first bit of the proposal starts in town. And it's the idea of having a walk that brings you from the centre of town to Sugihara House. And this will be an immersive audio experience, which will bring the audience physically to the house. But it will set up the context of the story. So by the time they arrive here, they already understand something of the world of the story. It's also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and plus note is you have to pay for it, so it generates a bit of money as well for the organisation. So we start in town, around the tourist office, and the experience brings you up the hill to Sugihara House. It includes the directions that bring you physically here, but it also has a whole sound world. So it's not a narrative journey, it's about immersing you in the world. So when I say experiential binaural sound effects, that sounds a little complicated, yeah? But it's the idea that you will have this world of sound. So you may hear the tanks coming down Lycée Soleil as you walk down. You may walk past a door and hear voices talking, a little snippet of contemporary voices. You may hear music, some historical information, but it's not a guided tour as such. It's a sound world that brings you to the door. And it brings you here both geographically, it actually gets you across the road, gets you up the steps, gets you to the house, but it also gets you emotionally to the start of the experience of this amazing place. So then when you arrive, just thinking about what we wanted to do with the house. We've talked about the beauty and the sense of history, and that was really important. To bring back to life the fact that that family were living here and what they experienced in that moment when Sugihara opened the windows, opened the curtains and saw the refugees outside. How do we put people in touch with that moment? The description that is in the exhibition at the moment of Casablanca of the North, of this turbulent world of espionage and refugees and people in flight and political shifting, which is so dynamic and difficult to imagine from this distance, I think. And that we want to get people to stand in the shoes of these guys who made these decisions. And then further than that, also to look at the lives of the refugees who survived and to really touch what that experience meant for them. So this is what we want from what we're trying to do here. So to start, in the entrance, you've probably seen around the house, or it's part of your experiential tour, the cranes, the Japanese paper cranes. So the idea is that we will have an entrance sculpture based around paper cranes. So as we enter, we're already saying something that talks in the language of the house, that has the same beauty, that evocative spirit of flight, something quite uplifting, and something that talks immediately about this moment of Sugihara making this decision about to grant the visas. And then as we move through the house, each room will have a slightly different part of the story to tell, a different role to play. So this first room that you will have experienced already, we envisage taking it back and making it the parlour of Sugihara. It's what it would have been. It would have been part of their living space. So to strip away what's on the walls at the moment and to recreate the feel of a parlour room of that time. And then also to have this moment when you open the curtains to actually be able to see overlaid against on the windows the faces, because this is the moment that made that moment of human interaction, that made that moment happen and that decision happen. So it feels really important to put people in that place. And then within the room, there'll be things to play with. There'll be pictures on the walls, but those pictures will tell stories. There's the piano will play. We'll play with ideas of parlour games. So the pictures will open, and behind the pictures we'll find stories. The piano lid, when you open the piano lid, things come to life. It will have that magic feel. And we'll devise a series of parlour games that will talk about that period. So it will feel like a space that you can be in. So this room is about Sugihara life in this building. The other room upstairs, we're talking about making about cowness, about the world of 1939. So the vision is to have some sort of operations room. It's like a war room, but a war room that looks not at military operations, that looks at people. So again, the plan would be to strip away what's there and to replace it with a playroom. So there's a series of interactive things in this room. So the map on the table changes as you interact with different objects. Things feel old, so it looks like the images on the wall come from an old projector. All the technology's hidden, so it feels like an old space, but actually there's quite a lot of hidden technology behind the scenes. All these images that you think are on the walls at the moment, where do they go? They become something we can explore rather than just being something that's presented. So the filing cabinets are filled with these images, and you can go through them. You can get them out. You can curate your own exhibition. The staff at the museum can curate little exhibitions that change on the walls. So they become something to explore, and to explore in the way in which, in the bits that you're interested in. The radio plays, we have to work in the 3 languages. We want to appeal to the international audience, to the Lithuanian audience, the Japanese audience. So everything that has audio will have switchable things so that you can access it in the language that works for you. So this is a little more on those. This is my interactive map table. And again, rather than showing troop movements, it shows the movement of people, the movement of borders. Really interested in the fact that everything happens so fast. And I think that's something that's really difficult for people to understand. The pace at which things changed at that time, and how, we see it now, once things start to happen, they happen so quickly. And so it's based around the idea of the calendar and the fact that you can see that from one month to the next, borders shift, countries our understanding of where nation lines are changes, and people are caught in that. So that's something that's important in this room. As I said, you can access all of the images. They can be used for projects. They can be played with. And then we head for the stairs. So having sort of explored the world of Sugihara, having explored the world of Kaunas, as we move downstairs, we start to explore the world of the refugees. We have an extraordinary wealth of images from the visas. There's over 100 images that I just found, just from the documentation without searching very deeply. And to see all these faces brought together, I think, is extraordinary. So there's an idea that we may make a sound piece that goes on the stairs, so that as you pass down the stairs, you hear the names spoken. So to give voice, to give names, to bring those people into the story, and to have the chance to really see all their faces that we have access to, and to hear their names. And then in the room below, the idea is that we have the opportunity to then go deeper into some of those stories. So this proposal is that we have 4 stories that we can explore in depth. And again, it's that thing of maintaining the beauty of the house, so not having obvious digital things. So the idea is that we would have beautiful framed images that you can interact with, that become touch screens, so when you touch an image you can find out more. So this will dissolve and a bit of video will appear. So it is, again, it's that thing of hiding the technology behind things that make sense in this space, rather than turning it into something full of kit that I think a lot of museums do these days. There's also information in this room about the journeys that people took. So this is really an exploration of the refugee story. There's also a very particular refugee story, which is the story of the yeshivas, which is something that I didn't know much about, and I think is not documented elsewhere, because it's so specific to what happened within this story, is that a lot of the visas Sugihara issued were to the students of three yeshivas mainly, and those yeshivas survived on the back of those visas. And there's a whole world of culture. So there's a little cupboard downstairs that I've requisitioned to become what I call the yeshiva room, and to make a precious little installation, which I think will be very so that we place scrolls on the wall that you can interact with, and that we have books that have the sound of Jewish prayer. It's just that opportunity to touch that very alien world and to find out more. So if you're interested in finding out more, the idea is you can scroll and you can do a bit of studying. Everything's designed so that you can dip into it a little, or if you want to go deeper, you can go deeper. Because I think, we're looking at some people who come for half an hour, and some people who may want to come and really explore some of this in more depth. So trying to think about ways to allow that to happen. There's the 2 offices, which you've already seen, on which a lot of work's already been done, and already start to do that job of giving us the opportunity to stand in the shoes of these guys. So some little extra interventions in there, so that we sort of bring that into the world of the rest of the interactive elements, so that you can listen on the phone, so that things will happen on the radio. And in Sugihara's office, we start to, again, just break down some of the way in which the information is delivered, so that we have a document chest which will have replica documents that you can go through. And then for the first time in one of these drawers, we would uncover one of the actual artifact visas, which is a very precious object which hasn't been displayed thus far. There's a little intervention in the office of which for me is quite special, because I found some testimony. I've done quite a lot of research into other testimonies that we haven't necessarily explored in depth. And I think there's just something so extraordinary about hearing somebody talk about an event that happened when you're standing in the place where it happened. And there's some testimony from some young, she was a young woman at the time, she was 17, talking about the moment that she stood and Sugihara gave her the visa, when she would have been standing feet from here. So to then take these people and to show the fact that their families, so to have a little installation of the lives they made while we listen to their stories, that happened in this moment is a whole thing. Before we leave, then, it was important to, because we talked before about the fact that we want people to reflect on what it means, this place, and not just to hear the stories. There's and also we do live in the world of social media, sadly, tragically. So I wanted to give people an opportunity to engage with the things that young people engage with. So we're going to try and make a little digital thing whereby you can photograph yourself on your own visa. So the idea is that you can be captured by camera. Your photograph appears on your visa, which you can either photograph or print, or you can have a lovely printed copy for a small fee. Again, it's always a little chance to make a little extra income for the museum. I also want to do some work in this room just to connect with now. So just to give people an opportunity to make sure that this story exists in the context of now. And of course, we need to, in the downstairs area as well, we'll have the opportunity to show extreme gratitude to sponsors and to our supporters, because it's really important to be able to acknowledge them. So there's an area downstairs as well where we'll have the opportunity to do that before the moment when people leave. Just as we welcomed them with something that was really emotional and an art object really, that's designed to touch people, we wanted to do something at the end that was the same, and this feeling of escape. I spent a long time trying to figure out a way to get a toy train to run down the walls as you left, so that you had this feeling that you were getting on a train as you left. And in the end, I sort of come up with this idea of a sound and light thing that will give you that feeling of escape and liberation as you leave. That visceral thing, those emotional things that touch people in a way that information can't. That feeling of escape and of flight. And then it goes dark. And then when they leave, it's not over yet. Because there's a second part of the walk that takes you back to town. So having experienced everything, those that did escape, the second part of the walk explores the experience of those who did not escape. And it doesn't. I missed that slide. I was doing so well. So on the way back, you have the opportunity which takes you from Sugihara House to this amazing location here, which overlooks the railway station, and you can hear something of the story of the deportations, where people stood to watch the deportations. You come back, you come across Remibas Park, which has this multicultural soundscape of the Orthodox Church. I don't know if some of you may have seen a project I did in Remibas Park some years ago, exploring the sounds of that multicultural world. So to revisit some of that, the sound of the mosque, the Russian Orthodox Church, and then of course the story of the partisans, which exists so strongly in Remibas Park. And so you get this journey across the park, and the journey back into town takes you along Mishku, which is past the site of the Tukis garage. So it brings you back and really gives you a sight of what those people who escaped. And it delivers you back to town, to the monuments, to Sugihara and to Svartsentak. So that's the general idea. It's the practical stuff, before I shut up and let other people talk. The practical things are that we need some money to do it. There's applications are in to Rothschild Foundation, to the New Cultural Institute. I know the ask is at other places. I don't like talking about money. I was told you were business people and you would ask me about money. So I was persuaded to to tell you how much we think this is going to cost. This is what we think the exhibition's going to cost. Obviously, this is the capital cost of the exhibition. It's obviously not everything we need to keep this place open and to keep people coming to see the exhibition. But if you want a number on all of that, that's the number I have to offer you. So there you go. As I say, it's a vision, and what's important is that the ideas remain true. As we make, things will change. We'll discover things. I've been making work like this for long enough to know that things that you thought were going to be brilliant don't necessarily work, but things which you never imagined would work become much bigger. So don't come back in a year's time expecting to see exactly the outcomes that are on that presentation, but come back and see the manifestation of the ideas and the vision and the passion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, for the presentation. Tadaraba. Aš dabar šiek tiek perėsiu į lietuvių kalbą. I'll speak for a moment in Lithuanian, and then we will continue. Our last part of the program will be also held in English. Tai kaip ir pristatė Jenny, aš jau drįsiu vadinti mūsų bičiulė, iš tikrųjų turim didelę viziją, didelį projektą, kaip atnaujinti muziejų, kaip pristatyti, kaip padaryti jį patrauklų, žinomą. Viena vertus, antra vertus, irgi buvo sakyta, ieškome ir bendraminčių, ir siūlome šitas erdves ir jūsų iniciatyvom, ir tuo pačiu metu ieškome ir žmonių, kurie norėtų pasidalinti ir savo paramą ir matyti, kaip ar mūsų, ar bendros idėjos yra įgyvendinamos ir pasiekia kažkokias tai apčiuopiamas formas. Nes tas atnaujinimas mums reikalingas ir dėl patrauklumo, ir dėl turistų didinimo, skaičiaus plėtojimo, ir vėl dėl Kauno, sakykime, bendro augimo, nes mūsų didžioji patirtis yra su japonų turistais, tai dažniausiai jie praleidžia čia apie pusę dienos, nemažai praleidžia mūsų laikę, bet mes norim ir daugiau turistų matyti bendrai Kaune ir kuriam planus, generuojam tas idėjas, kaip padaryti, kad Kaune praleistų ir naktį, sakykime. Vėl, kad miestas būtų gyvesnis, miestas būtų atviresnis. Bet čia yra tokios didelės idėjos, didelės iššūkis, mums taip pat yra tas kasdienis išgyvenimas, kurį irgi reikalauja daug išlaidų, daug investicijų, nes projektinis finansavimas gerai, bet tas kasdienis rėmimas iš tikrųjų yra iššūkis, pavyzdžių lyg tai galime atrasti istorijoje, tai vadinamai tarpukario Lietuvoje, dabar ta tradicija tik tai formuojasi ir kol kas taip jau yra, kad su Ramūno Garbaravičiaus, Birutės Garbaravičienės pradžia mecenavimo tradicija, dabar Saulius su Jurgita prisijungia, perima tą tradiciją šiek tiek, bet faktiškai stipriai nesiplėtoja, o tie pavyzdžiai paramos, idėjų kūrimo kartu, nes vėl tas Kauno, šiek tiek aš pasidinėjau ekskursijos metu, modernizmas yra pavadintas optimizmo architektūra, kad iš principo žmonės tada gyveno į ateitį, planuodami, žiūrėdami, matydami, kad štai mes galim padaryti. Ar idėjom, ar piniginiais kažkokiais, piniginėmis paramomis, arba bendros erdvės kūrimu, kur vyksta tie prasmingi susitikimai. Tai kad tie prasmingi susitikimai per daug nebūtų ilgi, aš grįžtu prie anglų kalbos, nes vėl šneka arba gali šnekėti gražiai daug kas, mes irgi daug šnekėjom gražiai, bet norim parodyti, kad ir vyksta tie dalykai, kas buvo minėti, kad čia iš tikrųjų yra ta susitikimo vieta globali. So I am now going back to the English language. Our final part is discussion, and we have been speaking that the Sugihara House is an open space for the discussions. So at the very end we will have very small discussion, because it is a challenge how to create a museum, what a museum should look like. So for the exchange of the ideas of the thoughts, I would like to invite Japanese ambassador, His Excellency Ozaki Tetsu, our distinguished guest. So please join us here in the front. While Japanese ambassador is coming, actually I can,
I was expected like this.
testify that actually Japanese people are supporting Sugihara House very much, and they are giving sometimes quite small donations, but they are doing on the regular basis, and this is a good example. And also I would like to join us our dear friend, I would call Jamie Kagan, the author of our exhibit concept. As well as I would like to invite Alessandro Bucci, Director of Holocaust Center from United Kingdom. So in this composition we have quite an international team, and this is again true fact that we are cooperating on a quite a large scale here. The main question here for our discussion is about the role of museums, since the world turns more and more to conflict situation, to the wars, and it is said that when arms are speaking, muses are silent. So what to do with the museums? What language they should use? What stories they should tell? How we should continue with, well, again, building common future. At the same time, since His Excellency Ambassador is not coming from the museum, he is coming from diplomatic and cultural field. So first question, my first question would be to Your Excellency: what kind of role cultural diplomacy could play here? What kind of cooperation between different nations could be seen?
Well, thank you very much. As I said, I didn't expect like this, but thank you very much for the invitation. And clearly, Sugihara is the strongest bond between Lithuania and Japan. And just Miss Jenny Kaganson pointed out for her first slide in the bottom. I think we have to, I believe we have to tell the story to the younger generation over the world to do something good for the world. Yeah, so I don't think the countries at that time, the border is changing like this, and countries now, nations, they are whatever democracy or whatever it is, autocracy, they cannot get together as a one team on the growth, because they have to be accountable for their people, and their people is quite selfish. So only way to do to incorporate the rule-based world is beyond the nation, beyond the border. The younger generation can easily connect with each other beyond the border. And we can have a kind of rule-based order in the world without border of the nations. So that's, I think, strongly, I've been here in Lithuania for just 2 weeks. I've been really believing that way. So I'm trying to do it myself. I've been trying to do myself because I'm really, Buddhism is quite a good experience for Japanese and for the world, and Buddhism is not religious. It's a way of life. We don't have any testimony in the Bible, and etc. We don't have any single God. You basically believe in yourself. No war. So that kind of stuff. And Sugihara was intelligence against the Soviet Union, and he was, as you know, he was supposed to go to the St. Petersburg embassy, Japanese embassy over there, but he was quite I think he knows too much about Soviet Union. So he became persona non grata by Soviet Union, so he couldn't go to the St. Petersburg. So he came over here in Kaunas. So he's facing, he doesn't believe Soviet Union. So he knows when Soviet Union occupied this space, everyone can be a really disaster. He knows that. He didn't know much about you Jewish, but he knows that. That's it. And he, at the same time, the one page of history, I think he knows that Manchuria state, which was made by Japan at the time, it's quite a military state by Japan, which was quite not Japanese-like. So he didn't like that. So he didn't like Manchuria Japan. So he was quite independent. And he knows that give and give is winning in the long run. You know, business persons, you have to give and take, yeah? Or take, take and take. But Shunai Sugihara knows that give and give is the most beautiful way to be satisfied as a human being. I think so. He was quite happy about that. So that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Jenny, the question is almost the same. What language, what stories, and how the museums should tell to their people?
I mean, you framed this by saying that in these really difficult times, in a way it's more obvious. When I did Out of Darkness, I thought, Ukraine was happening, and I wondered how explicit I needed to be about the connections between what was happening in Ukraine and the story I was telling. And in the end, I wasn't at all. I didn't mention any of that. I simply presented a historical story. And yet the comments that I got, the feedback, maybe 40% referenced what was going on in Ukraine, and people make their own associations. And if you present universal stories, people will make those connections. And I think it's particularly in times of crisis. I think one of the things that's really difficult at the moment is how polarized. I don't know what it's like in Lithuania, but in the UK at the moment, it's terrifying, the extent of the polarization and people becoming divided and set in crazy opposing positions, people who are really on the same side. This polarization is unbelievable. And yet, around stories like this, we can have much more measured conversations. And so it's more vital than ever to find these stories where we can talk about these things without getting caught up in so much of what's triggering the horrors of today. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Jenny. And a question to you, Alessandro, already inspired by Jenny's thought. So since you are getting the Holocaust Center North in United Kingdom and doing a lot of project activities, but at the same time, do you consider that museums could become a place of meditation and reconciliation? Is it possible to have the associations which are not directly presented by some various objects and with very, very direct speech, look how difficult periods in the past were, and other questions. So could museums be the place of discussion and reconciliation?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you. And I do think that if there was one function that museums must have today, is to be a place where people can develop critical thinking skills and apply those skills in the modern world. I think the key lesson, the key message is that yes, we need to preserve heritage and history and take one step forward, learn from that history as well. So yes, and as part of that, I think that it's a new conception of museums where, if in the past that role, those critical thinking skills revolve mainly around learning from objects, we also need to see the museum as a place where it's possible to capture those things that can't be represented through objects. What about, especially with Holocaust history, what about all the things that are no longer there, that are destroyed, lost, that are immaterial, the atmospheres that Jenny always tries to evoke through a work? So yes, the answer is yes. I think museums should be and can be and will be places for reflections and reconciliations.
And I think what's interesting in what you're saying, and implicit in what you're saying, is yes, they should be, but in order for them to be so, maybe we need to rethink what the museum is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was the first round of exchange of our opinions, and I presume we could continue, but this was the good possibility all the audience to know each other, and as you may see, this is the diverse audience, so maybe now I will turn back into Lithuanian language, and we will end in a way organized official part. Tai aš tada jau vėl perinu lietuvių kalbą, dėkoju labai kolegams, kurie pasisakė ir iš tikrųjų matote muziejus, nežinau kiek pasijuto per mūsų tą patyriminę ekskursiją, nėra ta vieta, kur reikia žiūrėti į kažką iš tolo su pagarba nesiartinti, priešingai, vėl išskirtinis privatus muziejus, gimęs iš privačios pilietinės iniciatyvos, yra ta gyva vieta, kur galima ateiti ir su idėjomis, galima jas išbandyti, galima diskutuoti ir atrodo jau srities profesionalai tam pritartų. Ir paskutinė frazė iš mūsų filmo, mes turim tokį filmą sukūrę, nebijokit, nerodysim. Jisai dar labai ilgas, bet paskutinė frazė man kažkaip dabar suskamba, baigiant tą filmą, frazė skamba taip. Šitas namas gali atrodyti įprastas, bet jo reikšmė pasaulio istorijoje yra didžiulė. Tai iš tikrųjų kviečiama būti dalimi tos kuriamos didžiulės globalios pasaulio istorijos. Tai baigiame mūsų diskusiją, baigiame mūsų pristatymą, bet pats vakaras dar nesibaigė. Žinau, kad dar liko kai kokių gardumynų nuo mūsų patyriminės ekskursijos. Tiesiog, nežinau, Sauliau, grąžinu tau turbūt, anglai sakytų, grindis ir jau tada tas laisvesnis vakaras.
Žinoma.
In English, I'd like to discuss with your project, because I think that museum shouldn't only represent the history, it has to be a link with present life. And if you could find some examples of the fruits of Sugihara, where could you present in one room Jews, families, prosperous life, or companies which was created as I was said, that as a third generation of Jews who live in all over the world, and of course there are some artists and business leaders, and this would create. I would like to see the fruits of Sugihara's work.
Yeah, it's certainly part of the thinking, and certainly the little piece at the end of the cupboards in the office is very much showing the families, the family outcomes and that. But certainly in the testimony, the interactive touchscreens, all of that is very much part of our thinking.
Also,
in terms of
finding the link between past and present, it could lead you to enormous finances, because these if you find the people whose grandmother was survived because of Sugihara, these donations like 130,000 can look like nothing to the businessman if you present him that look where it came from.
Yeah.
So that's basically two ideas.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely, and very much in line with our thinking.
Ačiū, Redai. Tai ką, aš kviečiu pratęsti diskusiją prie vyno taurės. Ir